Is the 50-year mortgage as good as the 30-year mortgage? Well, that's the question on everyone's mind as the Trump administration is determining whether or not to allow a 50-year mortgage, which is kind of insane because it's something that I definitely would have taken advantage of in my day. But let's go through some numbers and see if it makes sense for anyone to use a 50-year mortgage, what the pros are, what the cons are. Let's get into it. So this sheet of mine shows, it's basically just a model that I use in Excel or Google Sheets in this case to figure out, can I really afford a particular house? And just for fun, let's go through it. I've emptied everything out so that I can build it together with you. So let's say I want a $450,000 house. Kind of a lot, but whatever. Let's say it rents for $3,000 and I plan on renting it out from the beginning, so buying it as an investment property. It's just a single family home. So the down payment, I need 20%, so let's put 20% in there so that we don't have to deal with mortgage insurance at all. So it auto calculates all these numbers, how much down payment dollar-wise this is going to be, what the initial loan amount is going to be, and this process is going to take just 1 minute, but if you want you can fast forward through me explaining this if you've seen it before. It tells me there's no upfront mortgage insurance premium because we have more than 20% down. The final loan amount is going to be $360,000. The loan duration, now this is going to be a fun one. We'll play with this later, but for now let's put 30 years. Interest rate, let's go with the prevailing 6% average. Closing costs, this is just going to be like your origination charges, your appraisal fee, document charges, things like that. So let's just put 3%. Usually it's 2 to 5% on average. Mine generally are closer to 2%. It doesn't really matter for this video. Now let's go down to the monthly and annual fees to help build out our, what we're going to be looking at. So an HOA fee, let's say this has an HOA fee of $130, monthly insurance of around $70, annual property taxes of $2,500. Let's skip utilities for now because my tenants are going to be reimbursing me for that anyway, based on their own usage. Monthly repairs. It's a new house, so probably won't need repairs, but let's start budgeting for them now, just in case. And plus rentals usually do have a little bit of fix-up, a little more wear and tear than lived-in houses that are lived in by the owners. Monthly improvements, let's put in $100 just in case I want to upgrade a carpet at some point. And then I have these long-term assumptions here. Annual inflation, 2%, that's arguable, but let's put that for now. And that's just going to affect things like the variable expenses, like repairs, maintenance, etc. Marginal and obviously taxes and insurance. Marginal tax rate. In this model, it's a simple model, so I don't really go into depreciation and all that. Plus that all is going to depend tax-wise on whether you're the owner living in the house or whether you are just renting it out. So just to keep things straight, I'm just going to put a marginal tax rate of 33%. And if you own the house, you can increase the final net income by a little bit. If you don't own if you own the house and don't live in it, you're renting it out, decrease whatever final net income number it is. But either way, it'll get you something close to the truth, at least in the short term. Annual real estate appreciation averages around 3 to 5% per year long term. So let's assume 4%, but we can fudge these numbers however we want. And it'll still show the same point that we're trying to make, 30-year versus 50-year mortgage. Management fee, I'm going to manage this house myself, so no management fee. Cash reinvestment rate. So this number is going to show us, I'm going to assume here that every dollar of net income that I get at the end of the year. So rents minus all expenses minus taxes is going to be my net income. Every dollar that I get, I'm going to throw into the stock market, and it's going to get me a return of 10%. That's just the number I'm going to use for this. You can get this sheet yourself and change this number if you want. Annual rent increase. In my area, it's been around 4% since the year 2000. I'm just going to put 3.5 here. Be a little bit conservative. So now that we have all our numbers in there, let's go to the first year operating P&L. As we can see here, principal is going to be $368. I'm just going down the monthly column. Interest, $17.90. Yikes. But 6% interest rate. That's what it's going to get you. Property taxes, $208. Home insurance, $70. No mortgage insurance. HOA, $130. We've already discussed that. Repairs and improvements add up to $200. So total monthly expenses are $27.67 or $33,000 a year. Wow. Okay. On the flip side, though, you are getting rents of $3,000 a month or $36,000 a year, which is going to get you a gain, a very small gain pre-tax of around $2,800 a year. That's not going to be a whole lot, but remember, you're increasing rents every year, and ideally inflation in this scenario is only 2%. And remember, a huge majority of these costs are fixed, so these are never going to go up. Principal plus interest, that amount is never going to go up. The only thing that is going to go up is all of these, and they're going to go up at the rate of inflation. So if $608 out of $2,800 is going up at 2% per year, but you have $2,200 that's staying at zero, yeah, real estate is really how you beat inflation, and this showcases that. Let's move on to the upfront costs to close. So you have a down payment of $90,000. Remember, we determined that if we wanted to put 20% down on this $450,000 house, it would need to be $90,000. Again, no mortgage insurance. This is only for FHA anyway, and we're going conventional. Other closing costs. Remember how we said closing costs 2 to 5% of the mortgage. We put 3%. That's where this is coming from, $10,800. So estimated cash to close is $100,800. Wow, $100,800 for a $2,800 net income. Well, not even really net, because we have to include our 33% tax rate on that. So that's going to bring it down to around $1,800 in the end. But this is the fun part, and this is the part that we're going to want to pay attention to, because remember, we're using 30 years as the loan duration. The principal pay down at the end of those 30 years is going to be $360,000. Duh, because that was the final loan amount, and the loan duration has expired. Price appreciation, $1,009,000. Remember this here? Annual real estate appreciation. Real estate going up, in our assumption, by 4% per year. Well, that's what this looks like. This real estate has gone now from a $450,000 property to a $450,000 property plus $1,009,000. So in total, it's around $1.49 million, $1.459 million, which is actually, some of these should be, excuse me, that's some of these three. Because remember, down payment plus principal pay down, or the entire loan amount, plus the price appreciation equals what the house is now worth. Anyway, a little too in-depth there. Now this is the fun part. Remember how we are investing all the cash that comes out of the property after taxes at 10% per year? Well, if you do that enough, you end up with $1.439 million at the end of 30 years. Now, just to illustrate this concept, it's a little too much detail probably, but just pay attention to this part here. remember that $2,500 that we're coming away with at the end of year one? Well, after taxes, that is $1,876, which if I invested that at 10% interest, at the end of 30 years, that's going to be $27,000. Pretty crazy. Remember, in year two, rents go up, so our net income goes up. Invest that for 29 years, and you get $34,000. Do that for 30 years and add all those up at the end of 30 years, you're looking at this number here, which is $1.439 million. So, in the end, the house created net worth is $2.809 million, which is basically all of these three added up, not including your $90,000. So the house is worth, remember, $1.459 million. But you add in the net cash in, which has been invested for a while, and you subtract out the down payment. This is what the house has increased your net worth by, which is $2.8 million. Pretty crazy. But it's also crazy that at the end of year 30, your cash flow in that year, once it's paid off, is going to be $57,000 after taxes. So, a pretty great asset here. Now, the whole point of this video was to see 30 years versus 50 years. What does it look like? So, let's do this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste special values only, and write 30-year mortgage. And then let's come over here and write 50-year mortgage to compare, so that we can see by changing this number here to 50, what happens. Okay, pretty crazy. Initially, our eyes go to this number down here, which is the house created net worth. At 50 years, that's going to be $2.859 million, which is about $50,000 more than the 30-year mortgage got us, which is kind of counterintuitive when you think about it. So let's go through these numbers and see why it is that our net worth at using the 50-year mortgage after 30 years, remember this is only after 30 years, is higher than our net worth using the actual 30-year mortgage with a paid-for house. So this number here, the principal pay down, reflects that yes, after 30 years, we did pay down the entire loan of the house. After 30 years for the 50-year mortgage, we only paid down $95,000. That's insane. That's like, I don't know, less than a third of the entire mortgage we've paid down in 30 years on a 50-year mortgage. Yikes. Okay, let's look at price appreciation now. It's the same for both houses. Prices go up irrespective of the type of loan that you have, I guess, which is pretty straightforward. Net cash, this is going to be the big differentiator, because here, under the 30-year mortgage, our cash invested is now worth $1.4 million after 30 years. In the 50-year mortgage, our cash invested is worth $1.75 million, so around $320,000 more than had we used the 30-year mortgage. So you're thinking, okay, great, well, that is a pretty stark difference there. Does that mean I should go for the 50-year mortgage? Not necessarily, because if you're looking at it, a 50-year mortgage, yeah, you do end up with a greater net worth technically using this model and these specific assumptions. But you have to remember that this is only 30 years and you've got another 20 years to go on the 50-year mortgage. So yearly cash flow in year 30 on the 50-year mortgage is $41,000. On the 30-year mortgage, the house is paid off now, and you're raking in $56,000, almost $57,000. So that's a $16,000 difference, and you still have 20 years to go before you pay this sucker off. So $16,000 extra every year for 20 years, that's going to add up, and that's going to probably beat out this small $50,000 net worth impact difference that we see. So, and if you look up here too, on the 50-year mortgage, your principal that you're contributing to your to paying off your house every month is only $98. Not even $100 of your house payment every month in the first year is going to the principal. Whereas on a 30-year mortgage, and I'll change this to 30, it's $368. So no wonder after 30 years, one house is paid off and the other one hasn't even paid like barely a quarter of what the other one has. It's because on a 50-year mortgage, you're paying less than almost a quarter of the principal and the rest in interest. So really, yes, on the 50-year mortgage, you do get a lower payment. Remember how total expenses on the 30-year were almost $2,800, and on the 50-year, they're $2,500, at least at this interest rate. So total payment is less, but only because principal amount is less. So really, you're just saying, hey bank, I'll pay you a ton more money in interest. Just give me, I just don't want to pay down my house hardly at all, which is kind of crazy. But big picture, would I do a 50-year mortgage, and under what circumstances would I take a 50-year instead of a 30-year? Well, if I look at it practically, I'm not going to be getting a house these days until I'm 40 years old. That's the average age that someone is by the time that they first buy a house in America today, which is the highest it's been in a long, long time. So if I'm taking a 30-year mortgage, yeah, I'll be 70 years old by the time I pay that off. But chances are I'll still be alive. Whereas if I'm 40 years old and I'm taking out a 50-year mortgage, if I'm making minimum payments, I'm basically guaranteeing that I'm never going to pay off my house in my lifetime unless I turn 90 somehow, which very little of America actually does. So my point in saying that is, if going with a 50-year mortgage is the only thing I can do to get into a house, yeah, I'm probably going to do it. But if I can't afford a couple $100 more every month, chances are I'm probably not ready to absorb repair costs, improvement costs, definitely not costs incurred by vacancy. So I probably shouldn't get into real estate to begin with. But if I have, I don't know, $300,000, $200,000 saved up, and I'm like, yeah, I just want to get into a rental, and my income technically isn't high enough to do that at a 30-year mortgage, then maybe I would consider a 50-year mortgage just to get into it and without having to put a huge down payment down. And then I have extra cash lying around so that I can deal with the tenants, I can deal with the improvements and the repairs and maintenance and supplies. And then I can at least get started on this crazy real estate game that is the reason that most Americans are millionaires who are millionaires today. And plus, you know, if this 50-year mortgage thing passes and starts happening, guess what's going to happen to real estate prices? They're going to go up because more people have access to be able to buy the house now because they have more access to debt. So housing prices are going to start going up. You know, we'll probably see a bump in home prices going up. And so the earlier I can get in using that 50-year mortgage, probably the more secure I'm going to be in the long term with my real estate? It's just a hard question because my life circumstances have changed so many times, and depending on which circumstance I was in, if I knew that it would all work out, then yeah, I would get into it. But if I was just on the edge, if I was about to lose my job, if I was pretty insecure in my finances, if I already have a lot of debt to begin with, and I have a lot of expenses, and I can barely make this thing work, but I don't have any savings, just when things go wrong, man, I wouldn't get into real estate to begin with at that point, let alone on a 50-year mortgage, where after 30 years, I have less than $100,000 in equity in that place. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, though. And let me know if you want access to this spreadsheet. It's pretty convenient for trying to determine how much house can I really afford, and also what is it going to look like 30 years later, net worth wise. And you can change all these numbers that are highlighted in yellow. So if I wanted to make this $500,000 house, excuse me, not 50,000. If I wanted to change the interest rate to 4.5 because there's a buy down, or if I wanted to assume that real estate was going to appreciate at 1% per year, I can do all that in the spreadsheet. I could check out what happens if the loan duration is only a 15-year mortgage. What does that do? So you can play with this and come up with your own answers to your own very personal, very unique circumstances. And yeah, have fun with it. Well, I technically haven't published it yet, but I probably will. I'll find a way to share that with you guys if you want to download it and use it yourselves. Anyway, that's been it.